Hi everyone, welcome to the IBD Hub weekly live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Giulia De Mauro, the founder of the IBD Hub and the IBD Company, and today we have a very special guest, Zach Waters, who will be joining us shortly. In the meantime, I wanted to introduce you a little bit to today's topic. So today we're going to discuss with Zach how to start your own architectural business in 2021. And I'm really happy to have him on board for this episode because we previously talked in different podcasts and had many conversations, and I think you're going to love his input. So before we get to this, I just would like to remind you what the IBD Hub stands for. So we are a company that basically helps architects and engineers to grow their business and to learn all the business skills to push things forward. We do coaching, online courses, and consultations. So you can always go on our website here below to contact us or just DM me directly. And now I would like to welcome Zach to the conversation. Hello, Zach.
Hey, Julia, thank you so much for having me.
So you're joining us today from San Francisco.
I am, yeah, San Francisco Bay Area. So it's,
Very nice.
yeah.
So Zach is the board member of the Architecture Foundation of San Francisco, right?
I am, correct, yeah. So
Could you explain us a little bit more about the foundation, about your experience and your background?
100%. So I'm board member of the Architectural Foundation of San Francisco, which is a nonprofit organization that provides training and mentorship to younger folks who are exploring a career in design. So architect, engineering, interior design, even construction management and the field of construction. And up until recently, that was a very local program in San Francisco where you would enroll, if you were a high school student, you would enroll in our physical classroom, come down once a week, work with the computers, meet mentors. Obviously, COVID, March of 2019 changed all of that. And so like a lot of folks, we had to pivot, and we pivoted online, and we went from a very micro focused in the San Francisco Bay Area to global, to macro. And our first summer program in 19 had multiple international students, and we're hoping to grow that.
That's great. I think that's the positive side of COVID, that we all got.
Right. It is. It's there, we struggle sometimes to find positives, but the connections and to be able to do things like this and talk with folks like yourself has been a huge positive in COVID and kind of working from home. So
yeah. So we have talked many times, because I think we have a little bit of the same purpose. Like, we talked many times about the issue of the architectural training at university and how it's completely missing the business skill set of starting a business, but also negotiating contracts, make proposals to the clients, and so on. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. I think you're also advising people to start their own architectural firm in 2021.
yeah, it's interesting. So my background is in risk management for architects and engineers, right? And insurance and contract reviews and handling, being able to point out what might go wrong from a firm, protecting them from liability, things like that.
Yeah.
And that kind of morphed itself into, in 2017, 2018, 2019, the economy was amazing. Everybody was building. It was very easy for anybody to get work. And so we had a lot of folks who had an entrepreneurial spirit, and they would go out and start their own firm. And I was able to help them with that.
Yeah.
What it did, though, is it gave me a case study, right? It gave me a sample of people to watch and say, okay, this firm has done really, really well and they're flourishing, and this firm is suffering right now. This firm is having trouble paying the bills. Why? Right? What caused this firm over here to do well? What caused this firm to struggle a little bit? And what principles are there that are in place that we can learn from and be able to take forward?
Yeah.
And so that journey led me from the foundation. One of our initiatives was to reach out to the community. And so we started doing interviews of mid-sized architect and engineering firms, and just saying, hey, with COVID, we've lost the ability to be in person. We've lost a lot of the intangible things that come with sitting with somebody and sharing those type of things, right? You're not in the building, you're not having a cup of coffee with anybody anymore. You can still get your work done, but there's just an element that was missing. And so we asked them to share their stories and just say, could you tell us what it was like to go out and start your firm, what your experience was like, and then what education or what advice would you give to a young up and coming designer? And that kind of parlayed itself into everybody that is successful is doing like these things, right? They have some very, very core tenets that are in common, even if they have got completely different project types, even if they're all over the United States, all over the world. That didn't matter. They kind of followed these fundamental. And so what I've had a lot of fun with is trying to reverse engineer that process out, right?
Yeah.
And just say, like, what is it? Like, what makes a firm successful? And one of the core tenets we come up with time and time again is leadership.
Okay.
And so I got on this big leadership kick, and I'm a huge fan of like a Simon Sinek, right? The book Start With Why, great talks on YouTube, and just kind of the idea of leadership and culture and how that works into a collaborative environment. So that's been a really fun focus of mine the last year or so.
Yeah. So leadership, you would say, is the top element necessary to start your business.
Yeah, I mean, I think good leadership can cover up a lot of things and can solve a lot of the minor mistakes that folks make. And I think bad leadership can cover up great design work, right?
Sure.
Bad leadership can limit the ability for a firm to get exposure and be able to win projects and really flourish just by doing a few things. And they're, some of them are intuitive, some of them are kind of counterintuitive, but leadership, I mean, when we think about leadership, I mean, you think about, it's kind of like parenting, right? Parenting is the quintessential ultimate form of leadership. And, if you were going to talk about parenting, I have a baby girl on the way. So this is like right in my wheelhouse right now. And, if good parenting leads to, amazing things, it takes lots of time, it takes lots of patience, but it leads to amazing things. And, bad parenting, you raise a child in a poor situation, can cause some problems. Very similar, right? And one of the things that every architect has echoed is folks today with the internet have options, right? 50 years ago, 75 years ago, 100 years ago, you didn't have very many options. You would go work for a firm and you would have a job and you would try to keep that job for life, and you would retire and get a pension, and the life expectancy wasn't that long. Today's world looks so much different, right? It is crazy. And we have, I mean, you and I are talking and we're not even close to each other, geographically right now. But what that means for a business owner who is trying to bring on, younger designers, or trying to grow their practice or add partners or whatever that is that other folks have options. And if you're not doing things the right way, if you're not following tenets, if you're not treating people really well, they can go somewhere else, right? They don't have to sit here and get this out with you for 30 years, right? They can go start their own practice. They can go find another firm. And that's been a bit of a game changer for folks with what I would call like an old school philosophy, right? It's caused a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, I think leadership is definitely important to, when you have a team and you want to grow as a business. But as a first instance, I think the network is probably the most important thing. So building a network of partners and direct and indirect leads that you can grow. I think maybe that's the first step, to have the first project, and then you can start hiring people. I don't know what you think about that, but I always advise my clients to broaden the network. And back in the days, the was done through events and through word to mouth. I mean, architects used to be, they used to be a political instance in their city, right? So
Right.
it was a lot of a political rule. And probably the big giants now of the architectural field will tell you that, you know, it's about network and connections with the political world in a way, right?
Right.
But right now, with what is happening as well, it's so important to build also a digital network. So not just stop to the events and to the local clients that you could potentially get, but also look forward to make a bigger network online, which is not necessarily geographical. And make partnerships with engineers and other architects that you could pair up with for projects. I don't know if that makes sense to you as well, and if you can relate.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, you know, we are in this interesting time, right? We have the internet. I've got this thing right here that
Yeah,
attaches me to the rest of the world and allows me to communicate with anybody and everybody that is willing to communicate with me. And
sure.
that is different. I mean, even in the last, I mean, the internet's been around for what, 25 years now, roughly. So
Yeah,
in the last 25 years, that's changed. In the last 5 years, you know, using tools like LinkedIn for networking, being able to collaborate with folks around the world in different disciplines, or in similar disciplines, and you know, joint venturing or projects. That it's changing so much. So to answer your question in short, yes, absolutely. Building a network, being able to promote yourself, and if you're going to be, if you aspire to be an owner of a firm, or if you are an owner of a firm, being able to develop business is the single most important skill for a designer. And I'm going to put that above. I know everybody spends years in school, and I know this is an endeavor that is a lifetime, right? I mean, architects and engineers, they don't retire. They keep they keep designing into their, you know, much later years, because you gain all this knowledge. But I would sit here and tell you that if you want to run a firm, being able to develop business, go out and find projects, is the most important thing you can do. And if you can't do that, you're not going to stay in business very long.
yeah,
So that across the board.
100%. The other thing that we talked about last time was, and you will back me up on that, is about being aware of your values, personal values, but also professional values within, like, to push your company forward and attract the right people to work with.
Right. I'm a huge fan of core values. You know, this was when we were developing our company and building this out. I mean, this is where you have to start, right?
Yeah.
If you know what you stand for and you know what your core values are, when you're presented with a situation, it's very easy to say, well, this is what we need to do because we've outlined it, right? This is who we want to be. If you haven't defined that process, you can end up going down rabbit holes and making decisions that, you know, maybe are not the best. But an interesting thing that I hear a lot, and that you'll probably relate to this, is when a firm opens up and they're looking for work, and I empathize with this 100%. You're willing to take on almost any project, right? You're new, you're just getting it off the ground, and you're willing to take off any project, and I understand that. If you're 5 years in though, and you're still willing to take on any project, I would say that you missed a step in there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You didn't develop this properly. You don't have a good business development program in place. And from my side on risk management, where I see that really rearing its head and causing problems is you sign contracts with clients who are causing you to agree to things that are not in your best favor, and or cutting your margins significantly, and
Yeah.
pitting multiple firms against each other and just seeing who will cut margin, who will do it for the lowest dollar amount. And that's a problem. I mean, that's not a long-term strategy, right? That's a huge problem. And when I see it, as I have firms that bring me contracts and they say, well, Zach, I need to sign this. And I say, well, this is really not in your best interest. I mean, we can try to push back on this language or that language or get them to say this, but this is really not in your best interest.
Yeah.
And they come back with, well, it's all I've got. I would come back with, well, you've got a business development problem then, right?
Yeah.
This is not a contractual issue. We can say no to this, right? What we
Yeah.
have is we don't have anything else in the pipeline. That's a problem. So
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it before. It's also about the fact that most architects actually don't know their value. So whether they are applying for a job or starting their own business, they are very insecure about their work. And I think that's also to the fact that there is so much competition in the architectural world that, you know, we feel pressured that the client or the person that hires us will say like, okay, you know, I have other CVs or I have other architecture offices that will do the job if you don't want to do it like this. But actually, the more you know your value and your standing points, the more you will be successful and you have margin to negotiate. So that's why it's so for instance, if we take an example, if one of your values is sustainability, you will want to work with clients that also have that value in mind. You cannot go to a client and believe in sustainability and then you find a client that wants to reduce the cost as much as possible and is not really interested in sustainability, doesn't believe in it, and so on. That doesn't really showcase your portfolio whatsoever, and it means that your value is not in the right place. If you showcase your value in the right way, you are able to attract engineers and architects that will want to work with you for your sustainability skills, but you will also find the right clients that will elevate you to do the projects that you want to do. And it's the same for finding a job. I mean, if you don't know your value and what you want to learn in the company, and I was talking about it with Eric, who was in the previous session as well. If you're looking for a job, but you are not clear about what you want to learn from the company, and you just stand back like, okay, I agree with everything you want, then yeah, why would they pick you instead of someone that is motivated and put boundaries, right? Like,
right.
So it's all a negotiation in any case, and you're very right to say that the you know, some people, if they say like, okay, the client, I agree with whatever the client says, they don't have a good business development or even marketing strategy that is clear to attract the right people. It always has to work in parallel. You do a project and in parallel you find clients. And if this system is not really working, then yeah, it's not good, a good company.
Right.
So
There's a
yeah.
lot to be said there. I mean, you could have a whole long conversation on the design process and how you could build that around the collaboration with the client and what we think that should look like and then what it actually looks like, and you know how this is causing problems here. And I've had that discussion with so many firm owners, and it's fascinating. And I've heard multiple, you know, ideas behind it, right? One of my favorites, I interviewed a gentleman named John Marks from Form 4 Architecture, and he said one of the ways they get young designers excited
Yeah.
is when they've taken on a new project. He said, I want you to give me 3 versions of it. I want you to give me what you think the client wants, and then I want you to give me what you think I would like. And then I want you to just give me what we'll call schemex, which is something I think you think is really cool and maybe it's way out there.
Yeah.
And he goes, you'd be surprised how often schemex is you know what we end up going with.
Yeah.
And that's I mean, that's so exciting, right? Because but it breaks that idea that that what we need to do is go talk to the client, ask the client what they want, go do that, and then bring it back to the client. If that's all we're doing, then yeah, it's going to become a margin game, right? We're going to get chopped down and not, you know, not be valued properly.
I have a question here. To show your value in a proper way, what is the way? Could you give us more details? Show the value. Actually, you would pick a problem or a challenge that you're trying to resolve within your career or company, whether it is increasing the awareness about sustainability. It can be about giving quality of living to people with a very high quality material. It can be any purpose that you're looking for. but you have to pick a problem that you want to solve for your perfect client type, and then explain how you would go about it to solve it in your own way, whether it's a methodology, using some tools that are proper to your brand, and so on. And then the third part is to give your credentials. So why should they pick you over someone else? And these three things are going to increase your value automatically compared to others that are unclear about that. So I hope that I answered the question. If you guys have other questions, please do write them in the comments so we can pick them up as soon as it comes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, indeed. So what is the biggest struggles that you see with architects that are not doing so well with their business? Because
Gotcha.
the risk assessment is super important, as you say, and yeah, sometimes, you know, architects are really passionate about what they do and they don't necessarily think about risks. So I'm curious,
Right. That is true.
which failures do you see, which cracks do you see the most?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I could go a couple different directions with this, but the first place that I'll go is firms that struggle. Part of it is an identity crisis, and they don't see themselves. They see themselves as purely an architect or a designer or an engineer, and not as a business owner, and not as somebody who is responsible for sales and business development. Right? That's the first place you can get yourself in trouble, is if you don't believe that this is important, that this is your role. There's no way to be good at it. If you can accept that, you know, this is my passion, this is my endeavor, but it is my responsibility, if I'm the owner of the firm, to bring in work, then I mean, there's ways that you can go. Diversification is incredibly important. I'm a huge fan of being an inch wide and a mile deep, because that's how you really get the value on something. But if you were only doing hospitality in the United States in March of 2019, you know, we're not building a whole lot. I mean, there was stuff under construction, but we're not building a whole lot of you know, hotels and restaurants right now. Like, if you were only doing schools, you know, we're having trouble. We're still struggling out here to open up our schools, let alone trying to build new ones right now. So that's a problem, right? That's something that you want to be able to kind of look ahead.
Would you say it's like a 80-20 configuration?
You know, it's going to be different for everybody. I don't know that I would have like a cut and dry answer to that. I did talk to, in fact, I'm interviewing on my podcast tomorrow, a gentleman named William Duff, who owns William Duff Architecture Firm. And he kind of he views his practice as 3 separate studios, right? And each studio has its own focus of you know, project type. And one of the ways that he brings new folks in is to say, look, we have these kind of different areas, and you'll get experience in all of them.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that experience, you can pick where you want to go, right?
Yeah.
Or if you really want to, you can go start you know, we can talk about starting a new another studio under this, right? And I loved that. That was this kind of idea that if I'm a sports coach and I take over a team, I don't try to bring my scheme and force everybody to follow my scheme as much as I do. I look at my players and see what I've got, and then I form a scheme around that, and I go out and win that way, right? Yeah. That's sometimes, you know, you're asking somebody to do something that's just not in their skill set, and it's just a matter of finding a different skill set or finding them a different fit. But yeah, project type's going to be huge. Just having a business plan sometimes, I'll be honest with you, when I see a firm starting, and I can tell right away when somebody has come to me and they've said, Zach, we have our business plan and we've formed our entity, whether that's a corporation or whatever that looks like. We've talked to an attorney already. We're getting insurance in place, and we've done this. And we've talked to these 5 potential clients, and we have these streams. I'm like, man, you're looking pretty good, right? What scares me most is Zach, I was working for ABC firm, and I think I'm going to go out on my own. I have this one project. That's all I got. That's as far as I've got. I'm like, okay, that's great. That's a great start.
Yeah.
But there's a
Yeah.
lot more work that needs to go
Yeah.
into that, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, the biggest trouble I've seen folks get into is when they left, when the economy was good, and they had one particular client who was feeding them work and one particular project type, and they didn't take the time when work was really good to go out and develop new relationships, right? And
Yeah.
that's hard because we're talking about that now and we're already behind the eight ball,
Yeah.
right? We've already kind of missed that. Now, the next best thing you can do is start today
Yeah. Yeah.
and say, okay, well, let's go out and do that. But that is, those folks, it's just hard to make it. It's just really hard to make it if you're relying on one particular client to make your career.
But it comes all from the same issue, is that most people, when they are employed as an architect, all they think about is project, right?
Right.
That's it. We do overtime, we kill ourselves, the project has to be delivered, and that's
Right.
it.
Right.
But once you start your own business, you need to start thinking bigger.
Right.
And your day almost has to be segmented in different moments.
Right.
And I always advise to have at least 2 hours a day of business development where you brainstorm about who to connect with, and at least half an hour or 1 hour a day of LinkedIn posts and linking with people. Write a couple of comments on the post that you see, because that's going to generate visibility.
Right.
So it is so hard for people to understand how important it is, no matter the age, actually, because I have some people that start, they're like 30, and then I have people like 50 years old that also think like that. But actually, you can be even more creative if it's within a structure. So if your day starts with BD, and then you have 4-6 hours of work deep into your project, and then you finish the day with some LinkedIn work, you will be so much more productive during these 4 hours of just deep dive into your project, because creativity has to have a frame. Otherwise, if all day, you're not going to be productive or creative. It's not so.
Right.
So I don't know. At least that's my personal advice.
I think it's great advice. And I see this question down here, but I want to comment real quick on what you just said, which is the identity of, if I have a firm, even if it's just me, my firm depends on my ability to go out and bring in new projects, right? And if I want to be a leader, I need to step up and realize that people are counting on me, even if it's just the people, in my life that are counting on me to be able to produce, a paycheck and put food on the table. But if I have employees, right, as a parent, it's my responsibility to take care of my kids, right?
Sure.
I am in charge of them, and I am responsible for their safety for a long period of time. And I need to recognize that role and then plan accordingly. And it's really no different. And then it just becomes, as long as you recognize that role, I'm the one that's responsible for going out and finding the projects. Now, what habits do I build? And there's a whole great conversation. And you and I could talk on that for hours and hours about, building the habit of business development and doing that as a, maybe a daily practice, rather than it's like exercise, right? It's 20 minutes a day is going to get you so much farther than trying to do 8 hours one day a month.
It's persistence. It's about building context. So you cannot do that one day in a month. It just doesn't work like that. We have one more question from Jose. How do you find a client when your portfolio only have competition projects? So that's a very big question for people.
It is.
Starting. I'm curious about your answer.
Yeah. So you know what I would say, Jose, is so many owners and principals and high level folks that I talk to are as concerned or even more concerned with the process that you use to get there than even just the finished result of your portfolio. And I even had it said to me from a gentleman that sat on the board with me. He owns a 50-person architecture firm in San Francisco. And he said, when I'm hiring somebody, I want to see that portfolio. I want to see that website. I want to see your finished projects. But what I really, really want to see is all the crumpled up versions of that project in the wastebasket. And really what I'm asking is, can you show me the thought process of how you got there?
Yeah.
And that is, it's hard to teach somebody how to think properly, right? We can discuss details all day long and styles and things like that, but it's really easy if you're on par with somebody to understand the way they think, or if they're not quite sure how they got there, right? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But I was fascinated by that because I heard it over and over and over again. Is the crumpled, all the versions of the project that you took to get there are as important. And I don't necessarily know how to present that on a website or in a portfolio, but in an interview or to be able to articulate that is incredibly important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would just add the fact that when you start, it's about your own credibility. So for me, what is important is, not only to have these competition projects that are valuable, but don't forget that you had a whole experience prior to starting your practice, and that needs to be showcased. So for me, it's also about creating some partnerships with people that you worked previously with, or that you think that you could work with in the near future. So if you have some engineers or some architects that you have worked with previously, make them become your partners and your supporters, so that when you go to a client, you can say, okay, I have only competition projects, or I don't have projects right now. But if you were to give me the project tomorrow, I have this, and this architect and engineer that support me, and that would be my team for the project. So making those connections, especially at first, is really key, because then it gives you credit and credibility for the client to hire you for your first project. So Jose has another thing to say. I reach out, for instance, to meet developers and present my project and whole logic behind. They rely on experience. Yeah, that's why if you make those partnerships with, you could also, if you're an architect, you can have a co-architect. So if your specialty is about sustainable, I'm giving the example of sustainability today, but if you're focused on sustainability, you can find an architect that has the team to execute the work, but doesn't know anything about sustainability, and you can pair up together and go together to the client. So then you have their references as proof of their experience, and that's going to back you up always. So this is really the best way, I think, to give you a chance to start from somewhere.
Right. That's great advice, honestly.
Then we have other people that are connecting. If there is no more question, guys, this is the last option to give us a question. Otherwise, we will conclude here with Zach. Zach, it was so nice to have you here.
Giulia, thank you so much. This is great. Really, really enjoyed the conversation.
And we should do this more often, of course. Every time, if you have a topic in mind, don't hesitate. I'm sure that the people listening will be more than happy.
Well, I would go ahead and if you want to send us, either of us, a message, let us know if there's anything particular that you want to talk about. I mean, we can gladly pick a topic that resonates, for the audience. So
yeah, could you tell people where they can find you?
Sure. So obviously, here on LinkedIn, my profile is linked to this. Would love to talk to anybody, even if it's just questions. Honestly, our practices are very similar. I am here to answer any and all questions, and if it's just advice you're looking for, we can offer that as well. Our website, both blackswan-riskmanagement.com and Iowa USA is a larger company we work through, and then the foundation is asf.org. And we would love your support. If you're interested at all in the program, let me know. I'd be happy to pair you up with somebody to talk to about that as well.
also soon we will be sharing a podcast episode together. So
right, that's right. We did. That's getting set to release. Great.
Like, I'm also excited about that. So you guys can then find the podcast. I will put it in the link of the description of this live episode, so people can find you as well.
Perfect.
And of course, if anybody has questions for me after this live session, as every week I am available on LinkedIn, so please add me on there. And I see you guys very soon. Thank you so much, Zach, for being here again.
Absolutely, Giulia. Thank you.
See you very soon.